It's Tuesday, I'm Guy, this is Off My Bridge, and this is one of your questions. So someone asked this on one of the video topics, how do you plan a Star Trek campaign? Because it's different from a fantasy campaign plan. Well, yes it is on certain levels, and no it isn't on others. So this is how I go about planning a campaign. Before we do that, remember to hit that like button, or the subscribe button, or the bell button to be alerted when new videos drop. It really helps the channel. You have no idea. Just a simple little click. Just a click. Or a tap, I suppose, depending on what you're watching it on. Either or, both will make me happy. The first thing you need to do when coming up with a Star Trek campaign is decide on what the big thing is. You need a big thing. The Star Trek setting is not a sandbox setting. Players don't get to choose where their characters are going. They are following the mandates of Starfleet or the Klingon Empire or the Romulan Empire or whatever situation they find themselves in. So that means there needs to be a giant go sort this out arrow being pointed somewhere. Janeway had to get home. Sisko had to stop the Dominion War. Picard had to unveil the diplomatic nuances of the Klingon and Romulan empires in the Alpha and Beta quadrants. We have direct imperatives. You need to create some for your players, and those need to be launched as soon as possible. So here are a list of several big campaign ideas, which you're welcome to take and use as you so choose. Cosmic phenomenon. Something is ripping apart the universe or threatening the universe in some way that is of a non-sentient nature. Alien invaders. There is a new alien on the block and they're here to stay. An alien mistake. Oops, we did it again, and may not have set off a chain reaction causing all black holes to suddenly double in size. This is a problem. A conspiracy. Someone is rotten to the core and is causing something bad to happen within the Federation. Who's doing it? How do we stop it? Well, we've got to find all of that out. War. Well, the Dominion War is about as big as it gets, or it could get bigger as a matter of fact. How? Well, that's up to you. But certainly a war would be an interesting long-term campaign. An artifact is discovered, something that changes the fundamental nature of science or physics, or the Vulcans were actually not logical beings, and that was brought to them by another species that were a colonizer of the Vulcans, and they created the Surak story as a legend. Maybe that would shake Vulcans to the core, maybe it wouldn't. Something to be thinking about. It's an artifact, it's something that needs to be found. A discovery. Something new has been found. Perhaps a form of travel that would get from one galaxy to the next galaxy. Something along those lines. Perhaps it's a discovery about a genetic flaw in the human DNA sequence that will cause all humans to spontaneously die at the 25th century mark. Something of catastrophic nature. A big discovery. Now, when you think about a Star Trek campaign, think about any one of the Star Trek films. Those are effectively campaigns. How do I mean? If you think about any one of the films, there are sequences of adventures that are linked together to create a bigger story. Don't think of a film as a single adventure. Yes, it's a single narrative, but it is a series of little adventures that you can drop in to create a bigger campaign. Don't think of campaigns as in, we play every single week and we're going to play for 5 years. That is not a campaign. That is a series of campaigns that play out, almost seasons, if you will. When you think of seasons within Star Trek, oftentimes they contained specific narrative structures, especially Deep Space Nine, where you had, firstly, the Bajoran story, then you had the Klingon story, then you had the Dominion War story, and that took several seasons to play out, but it was a bigger story, a bigger campaign, if you will. So that's how you should be thinking about these structures. Little adventures that link together to create a bigger whole, but that bigger whole is still unified in a single narrative. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense in my head, but there's a lot of stuff going on in my head. Next up, you need to decide what is the inciting incident. What is the thing that triggers this entire event? Is it a random thing? Does it just spontaneously happen that these characters on their ship just notice a black hole inverting itself randomly? Is it something like that? Is it a declaration of war? Is it a child going missing, which leads to the discovery of a piece of an artifact that is rumored to be exceptionally old? What is that inciting incident? And you drop that in Adventure 1 almost in the first 5 minutes of the adventure. Get it out there so the players have a clear understanding of what is about to happen. You also, by the way, should have a session 0 with your players where you talk about some ideas. Well, I'd really like to explore like a war theme, or I'd like to explore, some bigger kind of issues. And if your players are like, yeah, sure, if it doesn't grab them, well, talk about it, see what they think. There's no point in offering a war story if none of them want to actually play through a war story. The Dominion War was a harrowing series of episodes, but if you remember, it was interspersed with a lot of non-harrowing episodes, a lot of fun episodes as well. So that becomes part of your job, is to balance it up. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's get back onto track. So once we've launched this initial idea, what then? Your initial adventure needs to also choose an adventure type, one of the 4: thwarting, delivering, discovering, or collecting. And the reason for it is that it's going to kick off your entire campaign. If you start with a thwarting campaign, it means, generally speaking, that you're going to have a lot more adversarial stuff going on throughout the campaign, rather than if it is a discovery, a collecting, or a delivering. Just because you start off with a collecting adventure doesn't mean that every adventure they're going to be collecting stuff, but it does mean, generally speaking, that the PCs are going to be finding stuff. Why? Well, because you cycle through all of these adventures, supposedly, as you are building up your campaign. And so if you start with a discovering adventure, you're going to cycle back to a discovering adventure a lot sooner than the others. And you might only have 7 missions in total. So your discovering mission will appear twice, simply because it was the first one and is the first to loop back again. With that in mind, we can now move on to the next step. And this is a flight of fancy, folks. This is you sitting down with a pen and paper or whatever it is that you use, and just taking a moment to then plot out the next 5 logical extensions of this event. The sun suddenly goes nova and starts blowing up, destroying an entire system. That's our inciting incident. That's our main beginning event. Why is it doing this? What's the next logical step? Well, the PCs are going to have to investigate, why did this thing suddenly go nova? Now, if you've decided that your big thing is discovering, say, for example, a cosmic phenomenon, the next thing would be that they discover that this sun just seemed to spontaneously go nova. They need more data. On cue, second event, is another sun that goes nova. However, unlike the first adventure, which was, let's say, a discovering adventure, the next adventure might be a collecting adventure. So how does a collecting adventure now play out with another sun going nova? Well, now the PCs have to collect a certain number of scientists from a planet before the sun goes nova, or they need to collect a certain amount of data points before the sun goes nova, or they need to collect a number of refugees before the sun goes nova, or the Admiral's son who is visiting on the ship steals a shuttle and sails towards the nova because they don't know it's going to go nova, so they have to collect the sun before it goes nova. Do you see what I mean? The sky is the limit. Once you have created your starting adventure, your starting type of adventure, your next steps just become so much easier. So the second adventure is that they have to rescue the Admiral's son before he gets destroyed in a supernova that he didn't even know was going to happen. They didn't even know that a supernova was going to happen, but it just so does. That gives them a second data point. Now they've got 2 data points. Now they need to start connecting things together. Okay, so this one went nova, then this one went nova. What's the pattern? Is there a correlation between their positions, their densities, their sun types? What is the correlation? What is the thing that links them all together? Once you've established that, they then can start to predict where the next one's going to be. And if they can predict where the next one's going to be, they can take precautions against it, they can plan around it, they can decide what they're going to do. And so they travel there and they start monitoring to see what the actual fluctuation is. We've done discovering, we've done collecting. That means we either need delivering or we need thwarting. So let's not do delivering because it's close to collecting. Let's do thwarting instead. So what do they have to thwart? While they are around the sun, busy taking astrometric data, the local alien culture attacks them because they believe their sun is a god, and that anybody who approaches within a certain distance, i.e. the scanning distance of the sun, is an enemy and must be destroyed in the name of their sun god. There's a lovely little combat that goes on. The PCs have to convince these people that they need to leave, so they've got to, do that whole diplomatic thing. They have to thwart the enemy, which is cultural misunderstanding. They have to overcome that in time before the third sun then goes nova. Right, do you see how it all works? Do you see how it all links? The next adventure, okay, they've now got 3 data points. They know what's causing these things to happen, so now they can try and stop them from happening. That's adventure number 4, which just happens to be a delivering adventure, which means that they have some kind of new device which they need to deliver to the next sun that's going to explode. Well, except of course that the stuff that they have, everybody else wants. Perhaps it's a giant space amoeba that really wants that trisilicate inverted flux capacitor that the PCs are going to be using on the sun, and so it keeps attacking the ship. Or there's pirates who are after it, or who knows. It's up to you to decide, which means the 5th adventure, once they have stopped the 4th sun from happening, the 5th adventure is back to being a discovering adventure, and now what do we need to discover? Well, what caused the entire thing to kick off in the first place? Now that we've stopped it, we can now understand what caused it, and that's when they then go and they discover that the true origin of this was simply a entangled particle which had been shot out of one sun into another and into another and into another, and that this is a natural phenomenon that occurs 1 in 100 billion times chance per star, and they can now monitor for that, and they can now move forward. Adventure solved. Thank you very much for playing. And that is our campaign of the exploding suns. In between each of those adventures, you just drop in some interstitial adventures, backstory adventures, player-based adventures, humorous adventures, all kinds of things, warning about the time travel adventures. Go and watch last week's video if you don't know what I'm talking about. You can add in all of that kind of cool and wonderful stuff. You've got 10 adventures, and if that doesn't take you 10 weeks at least to play out, you're doing something wrong. That's a lot of campaign time, that's a lot of adventure time, and what a satisfactory ending, and it has all just been created on the fly. Those 5 points, by the way, are at best going to happen in a vague kind of way. Do not plan out those 5 adventures. Don't spend your time doing it. You have no idea what the PCs are going to do. You have no idea what the roles are going to do. They might crack this entire thing in the very first adventure, where some of them do a scan and they get 10 successes, and they've got multiple questions that they can ask, and they just figure it out. There is sometimes a very, very rewarding moment when you go, this was supposed to be the campaign, but it isn't. I haven't wasted any time in prepping everything, right? You've just listed super quick those 5 adventures that could potentially make up the entire campaign. Now, obviously, this changes if there is a sentience involved. If a sentient being is out there and is doing something that the PCs are trying to stop, your chain of events is very different. Event number 1 is still the inciting incident. It's still the thing that happens and causes everyone to go ooh and ah. Event number 2 is now the sentience being. What is it trying to achieve, and how is it going to do that? And if that means blowing up a second star, well, that's what it's going to do. However, your PCs are now going to stop that from happening. They're going to be intercepting that entire thing. And that is going to change the next 3 adventures that you planned out. So why bother? Be flexible. Have a general idea. My NPC needs to blow up a sun. They need to blow up 5 suns in total. They're going to be using this technology to do it. The PCs, after the very first adventure, the PCs stop the NPC from getting the next batch of trilithium, or whatever it might be. So what does the villain then do? Well, they adapt, they adjust, they go after a second option, they go to a second point of whatever. At the 3rd time they get stopped, they're going to go after the PCs, try and stop the PCs. And if they can't do that, which they won't do in the 4th adventure, by the 5th adventure, they're then going to be desperate and they're going to do something reckless, which the PCs will have to move in and thwart and stop. So there is a slight difference. One, you can prescribe what's going to happen. The other, you need to remain flexible. And that's how I do it. I really don't put more effort or energy into it because things change dynamically. It's not just you playing this game. There are all of the players, and they're going to change it in ways you cannot possibly fathom. They really, really, really will. Anyway. Now, if you are not yet a patron of the channel, you can head on over to the link. That's patreon.com/greatgamemaster, where there are adventures being given out, adventure hooks being given out. They are fantasy adventures, but they can be adjusted very, very easily into science fiction adventures, as well as various notes and things that I drop out as so happens as the channel is developing and growing and moving forward. Next week, it's review time. And I'm not telling you what I'm reviewing, but I am reviewing something. Until then, live long and happy gaming.